Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers for our latest head-to-head. We are putting two of HOKA's snappier shoes up against each other. We've got the HOKA Rocket X3 going up against the Mach X3. One is a racer that might well double as a faster trainer. The other is a faster trainer that might do a job as a racer. And in the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to hopefully help you decide which of these shoes, if either of them, might work best for you. So let's get into it in our HOKA Mach X3 versus Rocket X3 head-to-head. Quick details first then. When it comes to stack, the Mach X3 has 44mm in the heel, 39 in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. The Rocket X3 has 40mm in the heel, 33mm in the forefoot for a 7mm drop. In our UK 9, US 9.5 test shoes, the Mach X3 weighs in at 9.4 ounces or 266 grams. The Rocket X2 is going to tip the scales at 7.5 ounces or 212 grams. On price, the Mach X3 is £170 in the UK, $190 in the US. The Rocket X3 lands at £220 or $250 in the US. So let's take a closer look at both shoes then, and both are going to deploy a dual density PEBA midsole with a PEBA top layer and a stabilising EVA lower layer. Both have plates, substantial rockers. The Rocket X3 has a carbon plate which is winged only on the lateral side, while the Mach X3 has a PVAX plate. According to HOKA's site, the Rocket is designed to deliver more cushion and speed, while the Mach X3 is made to serve up speed but with more stability. Some of that comes from the extra width in the heel in the Mach X3 and what looks like a slightly wider forefoot platform as well. The Mach X3 has a similar cutaway in the midsole foam here, although there is an intersecting kind of bar of foam here that adds a bit more structure, while the Rocket X3 is just one long big cutout, presumably to save a bit of weight and because you've got that carbon plate in there to add a bit of stiffness through that middle section as well. Now up top you've got breathable single layer warp knit uppers on both shoes. Everything about the Rocket X3 is a bit more stripped back, so you've got thinner uppers, less padding in the heel collars and the tongues, though not by a huge amount by comparison. Neither tongue is gusseted and both shoes have this kind of slightly narrower heel cup with that kind of rising kickback that you get quite a lot on HOKA shoes. When you flip them over, there's probably about the same level and thickness of rubber on the outsole, maybe a little bit more protection on the heel impact zones in the Mach X3, and maybe that rubber back there is just a little bit thicker as well. So quick word on fit, comparing the fit in these two shoes. I've got a UK 9, US 9.5 in both. That is half a size up over what I'd normally wear in most shoes and even in HOKA shoes. I'd usually go for a UK 8.5. HOKA shoes can come up quite snug on me though. So in these ones I have them in a 9. And let's go through. We've got the Mach X3 here. And what I'll say is there's a bit more room into the toe box in this shoe. It feels a bit more airy from this kind of front section. It still kind of holds really nicely across the back of the toe knuckles. Like I've got good security right here, holds the foot nicely up into the midfoot. But when it gets into this toe box, there's just a bit more kind of wiggle room for the toes to splay. It all feels a bit more airy, a bit more roomy than what you get in the Rocket X3, which you can see it's kind of a narrower shoe, straight back. It's almost got straight lines here with quite a sharp taper. That means there's a bit more hold here in the back of the toes on the toe knuckles for what I would describe as a race fit. There's not quite as much length either in terms of up here in the toe box. My toes a bit closer to the end of the shoe here, but it's fine. There's just about half a thumb's width, and in a race shoe that's something that I would expect. When you go back to the Mach X3, it just feels like there's a little bit more room, particularly when you get into these kind of across my toes kind of sweeping around here. The big toe's quite close, but the rest of it's good. When you come back to the midfoot lockdown on both shoes, I find it really solid here. These kind of laces lock down really nicely, no problems with lace pinch into the heel collars, and I like the fact that the Rocket X3 has this kind of more traditional kind of padding for a race shoe, and that kind of almost sort of speaks to its sort of comfort as a carbon shoe and ups its kind of daily trainer potential or its sort of long run training potential. When you go to the Mach X3, you've also got this really nicely padded heel collar. Can be a bit of slipping. You've got to lace this down really nice and secure here to make sure you're getting all that hold nicely, but in general, if I get that lacing right, I don't have any problems. But my tip for both of these shoes, got a racy fit on the left in the Rocket X3, which, that doesn't feel so roomy. There's a bit more room in the Mach X3, but for both of these and for the purposes I would use them, I would go half a size up than my regular running shoe size in HOKA.
Comes the fit of the two shoes, I have both in my normal running shoe size. That's a UK 9, which is a US 9.5 for HOKA, and they both fit me really well. I tend to get on really well with the fit of HOKA shoes. I have quite a narrow foot, and I have enough room in both the shoes around the midfoot, enough room around the toes as well, and a good comfortable hold around the heel. The upper on the Mach X3 is a big improvement on the one on the Mach X2 in that regard, and both are shoes that I found comfortable to use for long runs thanks to their fit. So I'll stick to your normal size, and if you've had other HOKA shoes in the past, go with that size if it worked for you.
So in testing, I've run north of 40 miles in both shoes, everything across the pace range from slow and easy to all out. Some fresh, some feeling great, some on legs that are tired and a bit more ragged. The longest time on feet in the Rocket was around 90 minutes, but I did a 3-hour 18-miler in the Mach X3. I've largely done those miles on roads, bit of off-road. I did a side-by-side mile to tease out the finer detailed differences in the ride as well, but more on that a little bit later. First, let's have a look at each of these shoes now. I enjoyed moving in the Rocket X3 right across the pace range. I get a really smooth clip-along transition from this shoe. That's from the combination of the rocker and the plate. The landings aren't too soft and wobbly. It is quite a bouncy shoe, and it does kind of eat the road really nicely. There is some confident reliability underfoot though, and a consistency in this platform for a carbon racer that I think gives you the confidence to run more freely. Unlike some carbon race shoes where I have to kind of focus on foot strike, I think the Rocket X3 sort of fades more into the background and gives you a bit of energy from back there. But I found there was really good protection from that sort of dual density stack, followed by a kind of easy rolling propulsion. It sort of helps you out of each foot strike whilst it's doing it, put some energy there, but it does feel kind of smooth and fast but controlled. I also find the Rocket X3 quite accommodating at my slower paces, or more for my kind of slightly loose and ragged easy run form. It's not the fastest feeling carbon shoe, but it is no slouch, and it kind of gives back when you're running with intent, but I wouldn't put it at the sort of top end of the carbon shoes. And I think that makes it interesting as a potential trainer if you're happy to train in a carbon shoe. For me, it's kind of sits somewhere between the Mach X3 and the Cielo X1 2. Meanwhile, the Mach X3 definitely offers improved comfort over the Mach X2. If the heel collars put you off in the Mach X2, it's now worth taking another look. You've got that kind of big stack plated midsole ride that delivers plenty of protection. There is some bounce and spring energy. That's a combination that makes the Mach X3 better for those longer runs for sure, and I think for tempo runs, which is where it probably feels best. But it's better at that than it is sort of bashing out 400 meter repeats. I'd rather have the Rocket X3 for that, even though this shoe can cope and can do those kind of efforts. But that Rocket X3 is lighter and better for it, and there are lighter, better other shoes outside of HOKA's bracket as well. So I think the Mach X3 has lost some of its sort of shorter, faster top speed potential, and for me the Rocket X3 does that stuff better. And the Mach X3 isn't certainly as snappy as something like a Saucony Endorphin Speed 5. I think the Asics Sonic Blast as well maybe slides into view here for a punchier ride for those shorter runs. However, this is a lovely shoe to run in. It's still got great range, maybe even sort of wider range than the X2, and I think it will now appeal to a wider group of runners as a training shoe. Still a great versatility option and good value dropping in beneath the kind of super shoes like the Rocket X3. Then when you put them side by side, here's what you'll notice. So I'm just finishing off my side-by-side mile here. I've got the Rocket X3 on the left foot. I've got the HOKA Mach X3 on the right foot. There's some similarities here. You've got big soft midsoles that are bouncy and energetic. There is bounce coming back from both. The difference I would say from having done that side-by-side mile is the Rocket X there's more compression in the foam. It rebounds stronger for a bigger kind of bouncier ride. In the Mach X3, everything's just a little bit firmer, slightly firmer, a bit more supportive, a bit more stable, a bit more controlled, and a little bit less energetic as you'd expect. The Mach X3 obviously feels like a bit more shoe on the foot. You can feel the extra weight, and you can feel the width in the platform as well. So yeah, you're getting a bit more agility I think from the Rocket X3. Having said that, as I'm moving here at a really easy plod pace, I'm currently moving at like 12.5 minute miles, and I don't feel that the Rocket X3 lacks that kind of sort of daily trainer ability. It's quite comfortable moving at slower paces. So while it's not as aggressive as some carbon shoes out there for all out racing, one of the things that pops into my head for the Rocket X3 is that it can handle quite a broad amount of your training. If you don't mind training in a carbon plated shoe, I think this shows me that the Rocket X3 can do quite a lot of the same miles as the Mach X3. You know, I wouldn't necessarily pick it first. I think I'd want that little bit of extra stability, a little bit of extra durability, a little bit extra room into the toe box that you're getting from the Mach X3 for doing the long training miles or those everyday training runs, where, you know, the Mach X3 is probably going to hold up a little bit better. But if you're sort of choosing one shoe and hedging your bets, there is a good swathe of training runs that the HOKA Rocket X3 I think might be able to cope with as well. So the other thing I think you'll feel, to me, I feel like the kind of the rocker on the Rocket X3 is a bit more pronounced, and it gets me out of my sort of toe off a little bit quicker. It's rolling through onto that toe off a little bit quicker. The Mach X3 feels a bit flatter. It's not quite as sort of rolling, and again that sort of feeds into that sensation of control. But the Mach X3 is a shoe that when you engage it can offer some of the energy of the Rocket X3. So I think these shoes now are a little bit more sort of close together, and I'll say more about that in the verdict.
So I've run about 120 kilometers in the HOKA Mach X3 and about 135 kilometers in the Rocket X3. I've used both of them for lots of pretty hard sessions during marathon training in the second half of the year. I've raced in the Rocket X3 as well, and I've done some easy stuff, mainly in the Mach X3, but a little bit in the Rocket X3 as well. You know, they have different roles within the HOKA range. The Rocket X3 is a pure racing shoe. It has a bit more stability than some carbon shoes, but it is very much designed for racing, so it's lighter, more aggressive, and more expensive than the Mach. The Mach X3 is a plated super trainer designed to be very versatile, primarily to be used as a speed trainer in a rotation, but it's a shoe that can handle a bit of everything, and the shoes definitely fulfill those roles. Like the Rocket X3 is definitely a faster shoe than the Mach, and the Mach is a more comfortable one and one I'd be happier to use for regular training. Not sure there's a huge amount of crossover here. Like, they both do speedy training sessions well, but the Rocket X3 is a faster shoe for sure, but you're going to pay a bit more for that, and the Mach X3 is a more comfortable one to use for, you know, long, hard training runs. Now, in the last few weeks ahead of the Loch Ness Marathon, I did use both of these shoes for a couple of long, hard training runs. Did a 20 miler in the Rocket X3 and a couple of kind of 15, 16 milers in the Mach X3. And on those runs, I'd have done the second half, you know, pretty quick, or the last section of the run pretty quick, you know, sub 6 minutes per miles. And, you know, the Rocket X3 is really good for those kind of runs because it is a bit more comfortable and stable than lots of carbon shoes out there. It's a shoe I felt very happy doing quite a lot of training in, happy to warm up and cool down in it as well, going to and from the track. So you do have a bit more stability and comfort there than you get with some racing shoes, but it's not as stable and comfortable as the Mach X3 is, which has that higher stack. It's got a wider base. It's built to provide a more supportive ride. The upper's a bit more comfortable, and, you know, that's all a fair bit heavier, which does detract from its performance at speed, but it still has, you know, quite a fast ride with a lot of bounce to it. And I enjoyed doing those kind of harder marathon sessions in particular, where you're not necessarily going to be flying at the end of it. You'll be running at a decent pace, but it's more about you're putting a lot of time and wear on the legs and still trying to hold a good pace. The Mach X3 does that really well. When it comes to sharper all-out sessions, you're going to get a lot more out of the Rocket X3 because it is a much lighter shoe and a more aggressive and fast one. So I've done like 20 times 400 in that shoe down the track, and, you know, it's better for that than the Mach X3 will ever be because it's considerably lighter and more aggressive. And I wouldn't really pick the Rocket X3 up to be an all-rounder myself. Like, it is pretty comfortable and stable for a carbon shoe, but I'm not going to go and do loads of easy running in that shoe. It wouldn't be very durable for one. It's pretty expensive. You know, yeah, it's not a shoe that I'd want to pick up every day of the week, whereas the Mach X3 is a shoe that you can do that in. It is comfortable. It does have that support and stability for long runs. It's durable. The upper's much improved now, so it's more comfortable. So it does give you that broader range of runs for sure. The Rocket X3 is a bit more focused on the racing stuff. And then when it comes to the Mach X3's performance as a possible racing shoe, I think if you're a newer runner, for sure, it'd be a really good racing option for someone like the Marathon, as it does give you quite a lot of pop and bounce and stability and support, and, you know, it wouldn't be as expensive as going for a full racing shoe. I think it's, you know, an option for those longer distances in particular, but it doesn't have the speed of the Rocket X3, and I'd much prefer to be in the Rocket X3 to race at any distance myself. But yeah, the Mach X3 can fill in that role, I guess, a little bit. And if you're looking at which shoe you might pick to put in a rotation, I think the Mach X3 pairs really well with a more comfortable shoe and then maybe a full racing shoe. If you have a 3-shoe rotation, you can also use the Mach X3 for pretty much everything and just have a faster shoe, or even use it as your, you know, like I say, racing option if you are maybe a newer runner or don't get on with carbon shoes, and then have a more cushioned option to go with it. Rocket X3, I wouldn't be buying it as a speed shoe in a rotation myself. Like, I would think just because it's quite expensive, and there are shoes that do the job really well for that, like the Mach X3. So you would be buying it as your racing shoe, and that it is a bit more limited in what it can do. Did do a short run in both shoes at the same time, and you can feel the lightness, the extra punch from the Rocket X3. The Mach X3 feels taller, a bit firmer because of the non-Peba foam on the bottom of it. Feels a bit broader, rolls you through quite nicely, but doesn't turn over quite as quickly as the Rocket X3, which is a more explosive and fast shoe, as you'd expect.
Verdict then, and I like both shoes. I've enjoyed my miles in them. I think they both have merits. The Mach X3 probably stands out as a better value shoe, a more all-round capable shoe than the Rocket X3. It probably compares more favourably, I would say, to other rival shoes in its class than the Rocket X3, which certainly isn't the best or the punchiest carbon race shoe going. But I do think it actually might be among the best carbon race shoes for beginners. So it has got a place. It's got an interesting kind of profile to it, I think, because it's kind of more accessible, I would say. But between these two, I think the way I'd break it down is the Rocket X3 is your carbon race shoe with stabilisers on. The Mach X3 is now a solid fast edge daily trainer. That can move up the gears, but comes in a bit heavy for the fastest efforts. This is better faster. This is better probably moving a bit slower. The Rocket X3 definitely has more race day potential, and I'd say it's a good hedge your bets carbon race shoe, one that might suit runners who are new to racing in carbon shoes. The Mach X3 is a good workhorse, versatile daily trainer that you could probably also run a marathon in if you can get used to the fit. But if you were thinking about adding these two shoes into your rotation, or two shoes anyway into a rotation, I would probably consider the Mach X3 and the Cielo as a better partnership, because you get more variety and more speed from the Cielo. It's a different shoe from the Mach X3, whereas these do feel a little bit close.
So my verdict here, these two shoes do their jobs, is really all I can say. Like, if you need a racing shoe, I'd get the Rocket X3. If you want an all-rounder or a speedy trainer to use a lot more regularly, I'd get the HOKA Mach X3. The Rocket X3 is stable enough, I think, to use for a lot of fast training. If you've got a very big rotation and money's no object, you could pick it up as a really good fast training shoe to pair with, I think, an even better carbon plate racing shoe, something like the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. But I think for most people, the Mach X3 would be the better speed shoe option because it's more durable, more comfortable, cheaper as well. So a better shoe to use for kind of daily use. And it can fit in a little bit at racing, but the Rocket X3 is certainly the faster option for that. I'd also think if you're looking at these shoes relative to their position on the market, Rocket X3 is a really good racing shoe, but I do have some ahead of it for sure. Things like the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, the Puma Fast R3, the Adidas Adios Pro 4, there's a few shoes out that I think are a bit more punchy and aggressive for fast racing, even Hoka's own Cielo X1 2.0. So it's not necessarily a big standout in that category, even though it is pretty good value and a bit more supportive than most. And then the Mach X3 I do think is one of the better plated trainers on the market. Just a really good all-rounder with lots of comfort, lots of speed, a shoe that's great for racking up a lot of miles in marathon training when you might be doing quite a lot of them at fast paces. So yeah, I think it's the more impressive shoe all round. But really my main takeaway here is these shoes do their jobs as described. So if you need a racing shoe, yeah, the Rocket's probably worth the outlay. If you're looking for more of a general trainer or a speedy trainer, the Mach X3 is the one to go for.
So there you have it. That's been our head-to-head between two of Hoka's top-tier carbon race shoes. Hope it has helped you zero in on which shoe might suit you best. Give us a like if so, and if you're not subbed to the channel, I want to know why not. What's wrong with you? Come on, get on with it, get that done. If you're after a full review of either of these shoes, those are going up on the channel right now. Go and get watching them. Otherwise, thank you very much for stopping by, and until next time, happy running, people.